welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotello, Esquire, and the illustrious Mike Lano. So, Mike, glad to have you back after your absence from last week. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. In fact, like to even get your opinion on some of the things we talked about last week. But first, I think you may have a thing or two you want to bring up for this week's show.
Well, yeah, I want to apologize. I've been under a lot of stress. My mother passed away, and I'm not used to having to deal with all of the details of it. And if any of you guys have, you know what I'm talking about, having to deal with a mortuary and burial place and the headstones and the newspapers to do the obituaries for and insurance companies, it's rough. And there has been a lot of wrestling. At least that takes my mind off stuff. Oh, and I've always forgotten to mention, and I'm not even wearing the right one. Sometimes you guys have seen me wearing a shirt with orange slices all over it. You can get that at Walmart for like $9, and it's like a perfect Orange Cassidy shirt. You don't have to. I mean, you can buy the proper merchandise.
That is, if you are an Orange Cassidy fan.
Well, I knew him from way before he got signed at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla shows. And I'd never seen anything like it. I even had to ask, I'll bring up Dave Meltzer's name since he's in the news. I had to ask Dave, I've never seen this guy's gimmick. This was about 2.5 years ago, maybe a little longer. And I'd never seen it before. And I thought, is this guy doing anyway, his character has been properly fleshed out, a la Dexter Lumis in NXT. He finally started talking on AEW. They had some amazing shows. But I'll bring up the Meltzer stuff. There's some guy I've never heard of, Evan, who's going to be back on either next week or the week after. He is going to be on at the start about every 3 weeks. I'll get him to every 2 weeks and then maybe back to, we'll see. But we are going to bring on his publisher, our friend Jeff Archer, who we've known a billion years, kick him in the pants, help Evan get that book out, the latest book, which is going to be tremendous. But Evan pointed me towards a writer I've not heard of. He's very talented, our friend, I want to give him a shout out. Javier, is it Oost? Oost in South America.
El Salvador.
He has some very good, so I hope Javier's watching. I emailed him. He's got some really great articles on people Evan and I have known.
He's one of our 15 viewers, yes.
Well, hopefully we're going to, because I'm going to be saying some controversial stuff tonight.
Good.
Javier's got some great Valiance articles on Valiance, etc. People that I've known, and you really should go and check out Javier's writing. Okay, so Evan points me to a writer unrelated to Javier on Dave Meltzer, who he's calling out for the latest brouhaha that Dave apparently got himself into with WWE's Alexa Bliss. He reported that I guess a ballpark of 500 people here or thereabouts walked out of her segment on Monday Night Raw in the live. And Alexa is disputing that. And people like this reporter are saying Dave has been picking on women, which he had the problem with at least one big problem this year about, was it 2 months back, with Charlotte Flair and commenting on her looks and things like that. It makes me think of the Tommy Dreamer thing. Tommy Dreamer's a really dear friend of mine.
He said all the wrong things in that Dark Side of the Ring.
It's fine until that last segment, and I'm watching it as it happened, and I've contributed photos to nearly every Dark Side documentary. This was not one of them because none of us were on the flight. It was only wrestlers, chartered flight. We all know that. That was one hell of a Dark Side. That might be the best one yet.
I found it very compelling. We spent most of last week talking about the repercussions and the things that sort of, it was sort of like the, when the Rolling Stones had their incident with the Hells Angels at right
in our Northern California there at the Altamont, right?
Yeah, the Altamont.
You go on it's there. When I used to head to your shows, you would pass it.
That's right, and the Altamont, that Altamont riot that happened, where the Hell's Angels, that like changed the free love element of the 60s. A lot of people felt like that was sort of the end of the Woodstock era, and how people had peace, love, and tofu, and all that stuff going on. They realized there's a certain edge to the hippie lifestyle that wasn't so wonderful, it wasn't so charming, and could have a deadly side to it. And I think, not that wrestling didn't have any problems before the plane flight from hell, but I think people didn't understand like how toxic, the general public didn't really understand how toxic the WWE environment had become under Vince McMahon. And, Vince McMahon somehow managed to avoid a lot of blame and liability in that episode.
That's such bullshit, because he was on that flight. You cannot pass all blame onto Jim Ross, because the plane was loaded with a bunch of liquored up guys. Vince and Linda apparently on that flight in the first class of first class, way up front. Vince, in my opinion, I don't know what you guys discussed last week in my absence, should have gotten his ass out to the back. And I think those guys would have shut up or behaved immediately. I can't believe they pulled all of that crap with Vince and Linda on the flight. And,
then he sent Jim Ross out to be the enforcer, who is,
Well, that's fine. But Vince is the owner of the company.
Exactly.
He's the ultimate guy. And when they wouldn't stop, poor Jim Ross, I got a feel for the guy. I know he did his best. I'm really sure. As he did, he also take the blame at that, I guess it was a half press conference. I can't remember if it was like a Comic-Con thing where Flair had too much to drink and blah, blah, blah. And Jim got fired as a result of that. So it wasn't from his plane flight when he got his final firing. It was the Flair incident at some kind of a comic book thing, or it might have been a Mattel action figure discussion panel. So, but Jim not one person in that role, talent relations, can handle all of those guys in that situation. Vince should have come out there, but here's what I'm thinking on the dark side. So it was tremendous. A lot of that stuff, I'm sure not even Meltzer knew, because he'd not talked to the flight attendants. There were at least two of them, not the primary one. And you can see from the initial pre-production footage of her, she looks younger, and then the stuff towards the end of her talking, right about when Tommy Dreamer's final segment, which came up, she looked like she'd aged many years. I'm sure it's very stressful for her. Brian Albert's today, Sunday the 27th, is it? 26th, was talking about Flair already having admitted doing the helicopter thing, not recently, but I don't know when the time was, but it was before the airing of The Dark Side on the plane flight from hell. So Tommy Dreamer's segment, though, I want to comment on that. We're fine until that, I think it's the very last one, which I groaned. I was there by myself. I was talking to you or any other attorneys, and I just groaned and thought, his wife, Teresa, the former Beulah McGillicuddy, and you know where the McGillicuddy comes in from? That was Lucille Ball's maiden name on the I Love Lucy show. That's where Heyman got that name, or it was the neighbor. Wasn't it Lucy McGillicuddy? That was her name.
You know what? You got me on that. I am not a I Love Lucy trivia.
That shows you how much older I am, but that's okay. So that's where they came.
You want to talk Rick and Morty, though? If you want to talk about Rick and Morty, I can talk to you about Rick and Morty.
Watching the last and final Star Wars movies, and I was choking up. I think I'd seen it, but I couldn't remember. So I'm watching the Porgs, the little birds, and this and that. And, it's on TNT, and it's going to be repeating all night long. So after the 49ers big game, you and I really are going to enjoy.
I sure hope so. Yes, we can definitely, take a sidetrack on that. But
it's now it's still pre-season, or the season hasn't officially.
No, this will be the fourth game. This is the third game of the season.
Okay, what's their record now? I haven't been looking at.
The Niners are 2-0 with two very narrow victories over, questionable opponents. Although Philadelphia is a decent enough team. We'll see how they do this week. But the first week against the Detroit Lions.
Philly won the Super Bowl, what, 2 years ago, was it?
Yes. Yeah. But they've fallen a long way since.
Our Niners, and I told you, for the Chronicle and the San Francisco Examiner, where I had that column for many, many years. I don't know. Did you ever see it weekly in the sports page for a while?
No, that was before I ever knew you.
Well, I mean, I was doing it in the 90s throughout the whole.
I know. I didn't know you till 2000.
Yeah, and plus they would let me.
Well, that's 21 years ago, so it does mean we've had a long-standing friendship. But I didn't join APW until the very end of 1999.
So the Examiner used to be an afternoon for pay paper. I started with them then, and then it was sold by the Hearst Corporation. Yes, the Randolph Hearst Corporation. They had some kind of a pairing with the Chronicle, but it was sold to the Fang family. Florence Fang is the famous lady. If you've seen the Flintstone house all over the news, where she's constantly getting in trouble with
trying to put dinosaurs around it and things like that.
Anyway, she was my boss when it was turned into a tabloid, and I got to stay on through all the various owners, including Philip Anschutz, the guy, I guess he owns the Denver Broncos and various stadiums in Denver as well as Los Angeles, and yada yada. So anyway, I used to photograph every 49er parade, victory parade going down from Financial District to San Francisco, down Market Street to City Hall. I did the same with all of the three Giants. Fantastic.
And you want to know why I didn't read any of those articles or see any of that stuff? Because I was living in San Diego at the time. So that's the 5 years. During that whole time, I was down in San Diego going to my college, UCSD. And we didn't have the internet back then, so there was no way to read that stuff unless you.
Another beautiful California city. But I was I think about 12 and a half years with the Examiner through all its changes, from a for-pay afternoon paper, sort of resembling morning LA Times versus LA Herald Examiner in the afternoon. And then they turned it into a tabloid, and it was free. They would actually deliver it daily, free to people's homes, 7 days a week, then 6 days a week when it cut back. So I covered the Giants victory parades and also the Warriors, Golden State Warriors NBA parades over in Oakland, closer to where I lived.
Yeah, I was at those two. I didn't see you.
Well, you'd see me walking down Broadway Street and some of the other ones.
I know you were standing next to Tony Bennett at the Giants.
Yes, that was one of the great highlights of my life. If you look at that was after all the speeches were made at City Hall, and to end the thing, they had Tony Bennett at the first Giants one. And he's standing about not even 4 feet in front of me, because I was the main guy. I pushed and shoved my way right in front there to snap those pictures. And he's singing a cappella, one of the great, great moments of my life.
The other great moment was when Arnold Schwarzenegger introduced the Giants and everybody booed him.
Yeah.
Everyone was in such a great mood. And as soon as Arnold Schwarzenegger came on, everyone was like, boo, get off the stage.
But he has been such a Trump.
He's turned things around. He definitely distanced himself from Trump, thankfully.
Yeah, so he's been aces with me. I mean, who would think we would look at Bush Jr. and say, God, I wish he had been president instead of Trump, because
he already was president. He already made enough mistakes. Just because Trump was a complete and utter disaster doesn't make George W. a good president. He still sucked. And I hated him.
Yet I think people forget and say, well, at least this was a guy from the political machine who had, even if he was an F-up, he had experience, not like this guy. It's like with Trump, you don't hire a newspaper delivery guy to do brain surgery, and you don't hire
America does, apparently. America thought it would be a good idea for 4 years. Yeah, he was unqualified, and we've seen what his actions have been like ever since leaving the presidency, and he's just been a sore loser, sour grapes. And if the Republicans,
he's more dangerous. It goes more dangerous than that. So if any of the wrestling people or conservatives are listening, I apologize.
I don't.
Well, sort of.
I don't apologize.
You guys have your opinions, but the problem is the way Trump making up all those lies, particularly about the election being rigged and all that shit that he was already doing months before the election even happened. And he gets those people riled up, and then they're not thinking clearly, in my opinion. And then they're buying that bullshit. They buy that bullshit. There was a recall with Newsom that didn't happen.
I've mentioned it on the show before when we had another lady talk about wrestling and politics, is that Lee Atwater, who was the main political strategist for Ronald Reagan, really was a huge pro wrestling fan. And he really understood the mentality of what pro wrestling meant and how it worked to motivating political crowds in the same way. In fact, that makes me want to go on a little bit of a transition if we can, because I want to talk to you about episodes 3 and 4 of Heels. I haven't caught up with every episode yet, but 3 and 4, there was a particular part of episode 3 where the lady who runs the federation, who runs the Duffy Wrestling Federation, meets up with the guy who runs the Florida Wrestling Federation in a diner. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah, I was wondering what on earth is she doing that for, unless she was like the African-American wrestler who's disgruntled. It's terrible because I've seen that happen where the promoters will blow off talent that they have no clue might jump to opposition because they're just not being listened to. Had the main promoter of Duffy, Stephen Amell's character, forget his name now, but if he had just maybe looked the guy in the eye and said, let's go in my office and I'll hear you out. Something like that, I don't think the guy would have jumped. The female doing it, I was groaning. Quite sure what she had an affair with the Michael Hayes type.
Well, we don't want to give any spoilers out. But what I want to, because this is not a spoiler.
It already happened, so I'm not sure how.
Because I haven't seen the rest of the episodes. I've only seen 3 and 4. But what I want to get to is the conversation she was having with
the sleazy Florida.
Yes,
guy,
and how
TNA footage. It's hilarious. He's showing old TNA footage, and they're pretending it's like a
Duffy wrestling stuff.
They're pretending it's like that Florida.
In the Florida, yeah, it's the Florida Extreme Wrestling Federation. But there was that conversation she was saying where he's saying people just want to see people hit over the head with, flaming baseball bats with nails in them. And she said, no, it's about storylines. And if you care about the wrestlers that are involved and the characters put forward, if you can't care about the guys that are in the ring for one reason or another, whether you hate them or you love them, then there's nothing to watch wrestling for. It's just otherwise a series of just raw. I mean, it's like watching a video game or something like that, where you really don't care. When you're shooting thousands of aliens.
Case in point, CM Punk or Bryan Danielson or Ruby Soho, formerly Ruby Riott, or even Adam Cole, who was toiling away and doing fantastic work and carrying really NXT in some ways on his back. People are invested in them now that they've jumped to AEW. Mark Henry, Big Show, Paul White, the names just go on and on and on. Obviously, Jon Moxley. And people are truly invested to where they're singing their entrance music, which we've never really seen before. And I've written about wrestlers' entrance music that dates back. The first one to use it, Gorgeous George, Pomp and Circumstance, that Randy Savage would later use in tribute to him, all the way up to Freebirds and Bad Bad Leroy Brown, way before any WWF guys had entrance music.
Well, I remember that Hulk Hogan used to come into the Eye of the Tiger.
Well, they didn't have licensure to that. If you also
Yes.
This was a bigger issue. Superstars of Wrestling, that was their primary show. It was syndicated. There was no Raw then, starting in the late '83, or even
used to watch that. Yes.
When Vince started grabbing up the talent, they were using Michael Jackson's Thriller as the theme music.
I remember that too. And they'd have Hulk Hogan coming in to the ring, and he'd have his American-made T-shirt that he would tear off. He'd even have the Hulkamania T-shirt.
But it goes more. Piper's Pit, when it first started, they were using the disco remix of "Owner of a Lonely Heart" by Yes as the startup music to the Piper's Pit. That had to go. And then I informed.
Another one bites the dust was Junkyard Dogs.
But I was the one that informed my friend, who's a total genius. He was a co-producer with George Martin of various Beatles albums, including Sgt. Pepper. Produced Dark Side of the Moon, Dark Side of the Moon, not Ring, by Floyd. And this is Alan Parsons, the Alan Parsons Project. His intro to Eye in the Sky was the Ricky Steamboat music, which has been, at least he was properly licensed by the Chicago Bulls to use it for that. That's the instrumental, the thing he plays on the keyboard that he's down in me.
Yes.
Just the two of us.
Yes.
So I even told Ricky this story, and he laughed that they had to create this shitty, generic Ricky Steamboat entrance music.
Hey, don't now. Let's not step on the toes of our pal JJ McGuire, who did record a lot of those custom songs for.
That was a great guest you brought.
We got to have him back on the show again. It's been over a year. He's a great guy, and we need to
delve into song by song with him. But
yes,
I do want to come back to the Tommy Dreamer thing, because what I was saying was that Beulah, Teresa, his wife, and kids probably should have been with him there. Maybe even you as an attorney should have been with Tommy Dreamer. Somebody should have said,
nobody ever hires Buddy Sotello for this kind of stuff. They should, but they don't.
I think you would agree as an attorney, Buddy. Think before you open your mouth, and then perhaps go in another room and run it by your team, and then come back to the filmmakers, the showrunners, the two guys, Evan and I forget the other gentleman's name, who do such a tremendous job with all of these dark sides. And that was the only one, like last week with Chris Canyon, my photos in that. But
didn't get to watch it, so no great spoilers on that. Although
I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to, but I mean, it's what
here's the side thing that people don't know about Chris Canyon that wasn't in the documentary, and that is that Canyon was a very close friend of Brian Cage. A lot of people don't know that.
And that's in it. Brian's in it. He talks about it.
But this is the part they don't have. Brian Cage still has the Mortis costume, and he once performed as Mortis for California Championship Wrestling out there in, when we were did our wrestling fed over in Newman, California. And so we had Brian Cage perform as Mortis. He was fantastic as Mortis. I would not be shocked, here's a super spoiler alert, if he wouldn't try to bring back the Mortis gimmick as a tribute to Canyon somewhere down the line. Not, regularly, but I bet you in some weird, wild way, Mortis will make a comeback and we'll see an appearance of him.
Canyon too. I didn't know that about Brian until the documentary, and now you're telling me, but I didn't know that till last Thursday. And I knew Canyon, and Chris was constantly asking me. I can't even remember. I must have it because I pretty much have all wrestling books that have been out. But he sent a bunch of my photos of him in WCW and WWF and Indies for his book. And now I can't even remember if the book ever came out before he died. If it did, I hopefully have it. Or somebody can email us. Why don't you email me, WREALANO@AOL.com. But all I was going to say was Tommy Dreamer should have vetted. Do you agree or not? He should have.
Of course he should have. Except, maybe he's one of those guys that feels that any publicity is good publicity.
Oh, no. Tommy's a thoughtful. He cares about other people. That's why that shocked me, and it was unlike him. He might have just been tired. It might have been a very long, grueling shoot. And I think if I was the producers, if I were to talk to them, I've asked them to come on this or my other show.
Oh, God, I'd love to have him on this show.
But I would say, did you guys not feel like maybe let's not air this because this could cancel Tommy so unfairly?
I don't think they care that much about that. I mean, the guys are nice. The guys are very effective, but I don't think they care what happens to these guys' careers after they air.
I think they do. They are really good wrestling fans. I don't know why. If it were me as the filmmaker, I would have said, I would have either on my own said, I'm not going to do this. It could get Tommy in trouble. And I mean, the first couple of words out of his mouth, that was like the last segment. He was fine up until then. I don't think he said anything untoward until that. And then I went, oh, holy shit. I know something's going to happen with this. Or then if I were them, I would ask Tommy, is there anything you would like us? Are you okay with everything you said? Is there anything you think? Because this is now a much more the last 2, 3, 4 years with cancel culture. This has been a
but overall, although Tommy's been in hot water with what he said, it's not nearly like the hot water that like Ric Flair's in, And the other guys are either have no careers whatsoever or are dead. So they pretty much.
I don't know if you guys talked last week. The referee Mike Chioda really came across poorly. He's like smart alecky, happy-go-lucky, and this is a serious topic. You don't smirk or whatever. You better be on your game, and you better be serious when it's a topic like this. Like Rob Van Dam, I've never seen him more serious, and he did fine. He did.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been around him when there's been a little bit too much. I mean, I've been in cars. I'll tell you an anecdote. It was him, me, Sabu's driving, and the Public Enemy, and I was the only non-pot smoker. And that car was just, I don't know how Sabu could see because the whole car, I couldn't even sitting next
like out of a Cheech and Chong video.
I'm in the front with him in the front seat, and the 3 other guys, Van Dam and Public Enemy, are in the back. And we were driving back from one ECW town spot show to another. This was after, I'm guessing it was Chris Benoit's debut against Taz, because I've just sent those photos out to a guy doing a fantastic book on the biz. Anyway, we see a traffic stop with cops upcoming. I think we're going back to like Lowell, Massachusetts from Jersey. And and Sabu stops about a half mile before, we could see it. Every car was being stopped. I don't know if they were searching the cars. He goes, Mike, trade with me. And I go, why? He goes, my license expired. He got in trouble. He had no driver's license. So I switched with him. And the car's full of pot. I go, everybody, let's air out this effing car. Somehow or other, by the grace of God, we got through that stop. I had my California driver's license. Yada, yada. I showed my insurance. They were just, I don't know, something had happened and they were just searching each car. But at that time, pot wasn't legal. We're talking 94. And I thought for sure we were all going to go to jail. But
even then, you're not allowed to smoke while you're driving. So.
But I had a major contact high from just being in the car, and
you don't get contact highs are a myth. But continue. But you're so square looking.
The windows up, and I'm smelling all that stuff. But anyway, my point was, so I've been around Rob Van Dam and Sabu since Sheik was breaking them in before they went to Memphis. Before I had to jaw jack and get Sabu, I begged, as did Sheik, who was in the main event against Abby on one of Joel Goodhart's second to last TWA shows. Hey, please put Sabu in this reverse battle royal. And he did. And Sabu's legend just grew from there because Joel did not know. Most of the wrestling world hadn't seen him in Memphis in 90, I guess. And this was early 92, had not seen who Sabu was. Nobody knew who he was. Not a single scar on him, on Terry. So to see Van Dam that serious, and I forget who else was on that thing, but the plane ride. But in any case, what is the current state, buddy, as you know it, on at least Tommy Dreamer? Because I know immediately last week, Dave LaGreca busted open, said that Tommy's on a suspension from Wednesdays when he co-hosts the show for an indeterminate time. Impact has suspended him. He wasn't backstage at the most recent pay-per-view or TV tapings from what they report. I don't know if that's a little drastic. It was, in my opinion, I just don't know why he misspoke, why he didn't check that with other people, but it was only a couple of sentences. And for that,
to that extent, it is an overreaction because Tommy Dreamer didn't actually do anything on the flight. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong on the flight. It's the real, I mean, as I pointed out, everybody else is either out of the business entirely or dead.
Well, this
So
is his opinion. This is his opinion, and really, I think he only talked about Flair. I don't remember verbatim the comments if he even included the Scott Hall mess, because Scott Hall was completely blitzed to
yes,
thought he was like unconscious, had to be carried off the plane.
right.
But wasn't it Van Damme who carried Scott Hall off? I think
Was he? I think yeah. You had to say, I mean, it was a total mess.
the wheelchair. He was in charge of that. But Tommy simply gave his opinion, but
Yeah,
it's not something you say in today's Me Too movement.
it was ill advised, but he's probably getting punished more because of the fact that there's nobody else to go against other than Ric Flair that's still involved in the business.
Scott Hall getting this heat. I mean,
Scott Hall has plenty of heat. He's just so out of it that you can't really do anything to Scott Hall. You can't ruin his career. His career's already ruined. He
still has that. I don't know.
He's not coming back to the business. He's not showing up in AEW
there were the rumors. Many people talking, as Trump would say, that Flair was going to do some shots or whatever, possibly with AEW. That's kind of totally on the back burner now. Nobody's
right. That's why I think that not Rob Van Dam, but why Tommy Dreamer was the next in line to kind of take the heat, because there's nobody else other than Vince McMahon, who, as you pointed out, somehow escapes blame in all of this, even though he was on the flight.
So much about blame, but should have taken the bull by the horns. I'm the owner of this company, and gone back there and told them all to knock it off, or maybe sterner words than that. Hey, continue.
But I think Tommy Dreamer is kind of being focused on because he's the one person that, quote unquote, can be punished for this situation. Because really, I think there's this frustration that all this happened and really nobody was punished for it, other than, Dustin Rhodes, was given a stern talking to, and you had some guys. Some guys get demoted or fired.
He was, emotionally upset about he and Terry splitting. And, you can see that stuff happening. Some guy grabbing the microphone. Thankfully, Jim Ross, told him to sit down and shut up. The wise man. I don't know. It's just.
But it embodied everything that.
Well, this thing happened. What in 2003 was it?
Yeah. No, late 90s. Late 90s.
No, it wasn't late 90s. Are you sure? Maybe.
Yeah, it's like 97 or 98.
I think it was a little bit late. If it had to been, it had to been 1999. I am thinking it was closer to 2002, 2001, 2003. But irregardless, now
which is a word now. It didn't used to be.
I don't think there's a statute on Flair getting into trouble for this, because those were actions allegedly involving him. But Tommy Dreamer just giving his thoughts or his opinions on something from.
Oh, you're right. It was 2002, May 5th, 2002. Just looked it up.
Yeah.
Thank you, Google.
But so not quite 2 years, 19 and a half. I don't know. I just feel badly for Tommy. He is the heart and soul of the business. He is a caring guy, a good guy. So,
Yeah, I think, as soon as somebody else does something controversial, which won't be very long from now, people are going to move on from Tommy Dreamer.
Not moving on from some of those guys that were completely. There's a discussion that were, as Matt Hardy would say, deleted from the business, like Joey Ryan, who I was around, you were around. But I mean, I was around him in locker rooms all over the country, in LA particularly, because he helped start with Disco Machine, PWG, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. He came up a ton of times to APW, and even more recently at the Cow Palace shows. He was in the co-main event with Cody in a cage, and he teamed up with Candice LeRae on a ton of APW shows and PWG shows. Never saw him do anything, not that, I wasn't always in the back, but I'm just saying that was a shocker. I would never have guessed that. And then there's quite a few others. And then there's some who somehow managed to come out of it unscathed, who had almost as bad, not as many allegations as Matt Riddle from WWE. but there's quite a few guys. That guy that was in MLW, and I guess he was on the first couple of shows of AEW. He's a British guy. He does sort of a real hardcore gimmick.
And wasn't he in NWA Power too?
Probably. But he's pretty much deleted from the business, and he was doing insanely hardcore stuff in MLW and was an excellent worker and well trained and all this stuff. But it's weird, and I wouldn't say odd, but the only female I can think of getting themselves in hot water was Tessa Blanchard, like that, for being deleted from the wrestling biz for X amount of time. I think over a year, when it was alleged she created a toxic environment backstage, that she said some prejudicial stuff in Mexico City to some of the luchadoras there, the female wrestlers. And now she's supposed to be coming perhaps to NXT or the main roster, which it'll be a big deal. I mean, because it's a shame she wasn't there when Rachel, Paul Ellering's daughter came in there, because they could have started the half of the Four Horsewomen, gone to WWE and got that thing going. Because that thing never got started. The Shayna Baszler, Four Horsewomen versus Flair's daughter, Ashley, Charlotte Flair. That Four Horsemen versus Four Horsewomen, or Ronda Rousey. I really should say it's Ronda Rousey's Four Horsewomen that includes Shayna Baszler and the other two who WWE let go. So they never got a chance, and that would have been a tremendous program right there. And something Bully Ray says on Busted Open that's very true, I've talked about this with him one-on-one before, is when new bookers come in, new creative people like with NXT or SmackDown or whatever, but NXT, out the window goes anybody that had some pushes. And we've seen that from the territory days, as I mentioned to him. New bookers come in, guys that were on top or had the hot programs, they get cooled off. Sometimes they get X'd out of the company, which is a real shame. So that's what's going on now. I'm not a fan of, I think pretty much people on both sides, the left and the right, can agree at times on some aspects of this counterculture, elimination culture thing, that it's crazy. It's crazy to me when comics can't say stuff at clubs and have to demand people turn off their cells or turn in their cell phones so they're not filming them saying this stuff so they don't get canceled. They have to watch on their P's and Q's, like Bill Maher or Chris Rock, what they say in clubs. People are probably very afraid, no matter what the genre, whether it's music, these people saying stuff in interviews. You got to watch what you say now so carefully, so people don't turn on you in a hurry. That's what I don't get on our side of the fence. Some of these.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think about that, and then you think about all the things Trump said over 4 years, and you say to yourself, and that didn't drop his. I mean, there are people that will.
There was something, you and I know that. Every week there was some crap that he did that should have got him booted right out of office, from the thing with Billy Bush on that what was that, a bus?
Yeah, yes, it was recorded.
Grab him by the blank. When you're a star, you can do whatever you want. People should have said, I'm not voting for that prick.
Yet, you see that is the thing, is that the outrage is selective, and it matters whether you care or not, And
great point there. That is a great point. The outrage is selective. What an excellent point.
Oh yeah, and so it matters whether you care about the audience that is going to be offended or not, because for every percentage of people that are outraged at anything you say, whether I like to eat cats alive, I like to skin them with my bare hands and then eat them alive. Yes, 9 out of the 10 people will be disgusted, but that 10% that goes, yeah, I hate cats too, and boy, am I glad somebody is saying I want to kill a cat and eat it alive. I'm a huge fan now. And so that 10% can keep you going. And in the case of Trump, it was about a 30% swath of the audience. Yes, 70% of us could not stand the things that he was saying, but the 30% kept him going. And if you can get 30% of an audience, of any audience, anywhere, you can make enough money in America to turn yourself into a star. And that's what we've seen with the YouTube influencers, and that we've seen in wrestling sometimes.
Let's look at that daughter, the college thing with her parents, her mom and dad, the famous.
Oh my God! Yeah, not only I got a little thing about that. Augustine Yanez, who was one of the people that was caught up in that entire scandal, was a high school classmate of my brother's. So he actually had to do time based on, trying to defraud the colleges for and bribe them so that they would take their kids. So yes,
I don't understand, because I worked hard. I was pre-medical, pre-dental to get into USC. That was my undergrad. I took a bunch of pre-med classes, inorganic chemistry, all this boring, horrific stuff none of us ever used in our real lives. But and also one of my professors there for sex and cinema and sex ed, we had to take some of these elective classes. This was 75 on. Was she's not even a real doctor, Dr. Laura Schlesinger. I actually took 2 classes with her. She was a lot of fun then. She didn't become sort of the kook she became in later decades on national radio, and I think she's completely out of radio now. She was kind of canceled on her own. But bringing it back to wrestling, and let's say Tessa Blanchard, who said some it's alleged, some pretty horrific things about at least Hispanic. I forget if there was other minorities that she allegedly slighted. But if she's able to come back now, I don't know if this is sort of a faux thing where people are fake outraged. And then when the person redeems themselves and like Tessa comes back, what an awesome worker she is, and great promo and everything. And so it's sad if that in fact did happen with her. But, I felt badly. I go, geez, this woman should be in WWF or something, or AEW. She'd be amazing with her dad in AEW, for example. But it's like, we like to tear people down. They come up, they're successful. America as a whole likes to tear them down. And then they like a good redemption story. That's just like wrestling. It's all a work.
Yeah.
All these kids, these college kids that are outraged at something Bill Maher may say about Middle Eastern politics or something. And if it's mock indignation or what it is. But now a lot of these wrestlers, the stuff that I saw in the 60s and 70s that so many of my cohorts saw, some not with us anymore, they couldn't get around with that. Like Ripper Collins, 1971, cutting a promo in LA on Bearcat Wraith. Ripper Roy Collins, who was a closeted gay person or bisexual because he was married to Barbara Baker, but a lot of people say that was a Rock Hudson type sham marriage. Alleged. But Ripper Collins gets on the mic, Russ, and says, this is a poor impression of him, because I'm the salt and you're the black pepper, and I'm going to throw you all over the Olympic Auditorium ring like, when they burn somebody, when they pass away, whatever that's called, I forget. But he was like cutting a promo like that, and it had racist undertones. I'm the white salt, you're the bad black pepper, and I'm going to, like cremation ashes, spread you all over the ring. This was August of 1971. It was right before the Coliseum show. And I go, man, this is pretty racist stuff. And that was 1971. So a lot of those promos and the stuff, like Thunderbolt Patterson was the guy that brings me into Cauliflower Alley now, which should probably end the show. Russ, if it's okay if I move to this topic.
Sure.
Thunderbolt Patterson was one of the honorees at CAC, and he's elderly. He was one of the senior guys. Backstory, we've always had huge main event world champions as our figurehead Cauliflower Alley presidents. The current president was not elected. He is the only one in the 55-year history of Cauliflower Alley to not. Oh, is that a puppy?
It is. I was going to give a plug for the Marin Humane Society, and we're fostering these 2 dogs, Chloe and Cody, from the Marin Humane Society for the next couple of weeks, so they can get spayed and neutered. And it's a reminder to promote your local humane society, and B, always spay and neuter your pets.
I can see that tail moving a mile.
Try to be patient when they pee all over all over the floor, which he just did.
That's what dogs do when they get excited, particularly if they're not an alpha dog and they're on their back.
It's adorable as you can just see, but he's not quite housebroken yet. So
my wife and I, major dog persons. All right, so this guy seized power in a weak moment. Red Bastien started getting Alzheimer's and/or dementia, like really fast.
1 second. Let's just quickly tell people what Cauliflower Alley is, just in case they don't know. There's a chance.
I'm not sure anymore.
What Cauliflower Alley is it's on this.
Because I've been with them since '87. I was the assistant head photographer to co-founder CAC Art Abrams in the '90s. For quite a few years, I was on the board with people like Sheldon Goldberg and Lady Rustler, Brittany Brown. But at the time, they came in after me. I was the youngest board member ever elected. We all had to be elected.
But the purpose of Cauliflower Alley is...
Well, the purpose is in doubt now. Because the claim, at least what it was prior to this president, was, and it didn't start out as a thing to charge members money and then allegedly give it to people in need. And it at least was, but there were other elements after the, and he really was not the founder, but he's credited, because they wanted somebody, a mainstream PR, famous movie star, TV star, famous wrestler, Mike Mazurki, is credited as the founder along with Art Abrams, but there were other guys who were involved and said, let's give Mike Mazurki the lead credit. They never get the credit due them. But it was a brotherhood thing of the business. It was a third wrestlers, a third boxers, and MMA guys like Gene LaBelle, and a third movie TV stars, or real REEL members. And it started in downtown LA, every other month, at the old spaghetti factory or Little Joe's, as just a place to break bread, to put aside heat, guys that might have had heat, but just come together, see their friends, and eat, drink. That's how it started. It was not a thing to raise money. But when another element came in around the late 80s, then the mission, this was right before Mike Mazurki died in 1990, the mission thing was, let's start charging members for everything. The annual dues were all you ever used to have to pay. That was $25 a year, and that has not changed. So that's a bargain. But you would also pay for your separate meal, at these various lunch spots. Well, then it got moved to the Sportsman's Lodge, and this informal thing where you just went and kibitzed and broke bread and had some beers and wine with your friends became an awards night, a Saturday night, one night only thing. And then the price, then you were charged in addition to your membership. It was like $35 when I started going. It started escalating every year. They'd add 10 more on it through the 90s. And then it was like $65, $75 for the rubber chicken. But it was an awards thing. And in that amount of time, one night, they could do a lot of awards for wrestling, a lot of awards for boxing, and a lot of awards for movie TV people, as was at least the founders' thing. So every president, so after Mike died in 1990, then we elected Archie Moore, the famous boxer, but he was kind of ailing and had some dementia issues going, so he was the shortest lived, or the shortest reigning president. Thez got elected, the great Lou Thez, greatest wrestler of all time, etc. No disputing. Then Red Bastien came in when Lou got ill and suddenly passed. He was president for many years, beloved all over the place. And then Nick Bockwinkel. And Bockwinkel then got that quick onset Alzheimer's, dementia, allegedly. But, we could see I would present photos that I'd taken of them in their primes, say early 70s, of Red and then Nick, and they couldn't even recognize their own photos. So that was heartbreaking. But then this current president, allegedly, according to the board members, all 38 of them who walked out on him after about the first year. They could not take his yelling, screaming, him completely coming in and saying, I'm not going to be a figurehead president. I'm going to make all the decisions, and none of you board members are going to have a say, a vote, nothing. So besides him yelling and screaming and belittling them, as he did to Scott Teal, who ran our very last successful reunion in Vegas in 2019, he single-handedly and his wife did that, then to be chewed out by the current president and after for like nothing. This current president, anyway, we are sitting on, allegedly, according to our treasurer who passed away, Dean Silverstone, who told a bunch of us the high six figures of money that we have been, that not we, but Cauliflower Alley has been sitting on, and yet giving away, according to Dean, maybe 12 to 15,000 at most a year to those in need. So that was the new mission statement. But the problem with that, when it was introduced by that other element, whose first name starts with a K, was that he would continually say, which was never true because Mike Mazurki never commented on it, according to all of those who knew him, like Maria Bernardi, who said it was bullshit, to tell people, well, we can't tell you how much or who we give money to. We want to protect those in need who might be ashamed that they had to ask for a handout or blah, blah, blah. That's all bullshit. But at least we were giving money. We were giving money, Red Bestie and So Ethical, we were giving money to amateur wrestlers. That all stopped when he was kind of pushed out of power by some of these guys behind the scenes. But at least we had long-term board, again, as I say, of 38 people, many of them very qualified, and they all quit on this current president, who then started just putting on the board, no vote, nothing by anybody. He just appoint on the board some of his Florida friends, most all of whom, other than Jerry Gray, who allegedly got COVID from the reunion last week, I'm getting to that, these guys had nothing to do with wrestling. Darlene Kress, I don't think they even said they had no connection to wrestling. So that latest tiny executive board that he appointed, just nearby Florida friends that would not look over his shoulder, so meaning there's no peer review, nothing. The C address, which had always been in Seattle, Washington, or Issaquah, Washington, immediately now suspiciously becomes a Florida address. They quit on him. The pastor, this guy, or the preacher, the guy called the preacher, was not in wrestling. Darlene Kress, the treasurer, said they couldn't take it anymore. They quit on this current president about a month ago. So he then appoints, which we've never had before. We've always had two people doing it because you want some checks and balances. Now, the feeling of many of us, no checks and balances. He appoints just one guy who doesn't appear, no one in wrestling knows who he is, as both the executive vice president and treasurer. One guy doing both roles that at least two or more people have always done in the 55-year history of CAC. So our reunion for 2020 was supposed to be in April. It then got pushed to September. It was then not held and rescheduled for last April, and then canceled and rescheduled to September. It finally occurred last week. But one person helped he was behind the movement last year, around last August. This is Greg Oliver of Slam, he put this big message, why I won't be going to Cauliflower Alley, and, blah, blah, blah. Why I'm not going, and he cited, he didn't want to go. He didn't feel it was proper for CAC to hold one until this COVID thing was over, until we could hug and our friends, shake the hands of our friends, all of that, not have to be masked at CAC. And then they got him on John Arizzi's podcast a few days after this thing blazed the internet and social media, Greg's post. So the current president kept going on shows. I was on the first hour of Busted Open, not the full segment, but pretty long, on a date when the current president, on the third segment, the third hour later on, followed me, and he kept saying when prodded or asked, why are you trying to hold this? He kept saying each time he's on, we've lost so much money. We've lost all this ability. We're not giving hardly any money away. The most anybody can get, allegedly, $1,500 in any year. They have to go now, since he took over, through miles of paperwork, allegedly, and then their request for desperation aid for like hospital, doctor bills, home foreclosure, because they can't work because they're ill, can get stalled in the board, or this current president who is allegedly is said to have short-term memory losses may forget to bring it up or whatever. Stall out. That is the reason so many people aren't even bothering with CAC. They're going straight to crowdsourcing, as many have online, including myself and many others in Trumpian fashion have written about, have social media about, that they're just going to crowdsourcing like Indiegogo and GoFundMe. They can get what they need very quickly, sometimes in less than a day or a couple of hours, and none of this delay or stall. They get it. They get what they need instead of a paltry $1,500 or less. And granted, you can't help somebody out fully with big $100,000 needs, but come on, $1,500. I've been asked repeatedly. I can't tell you how many times. What should we have as a max? I'm going, why are you asking me? Why isn't it case by case as to why, because you've gotten so much heat by only giving $1,500 away. Now you're starting to ask former board members, what should our maximum we give somebody be? And I go, at least I said, I don't know what the others said, it should be case by case, and you vet these people. So the point is now we have, at last count, 29, possibly more, actually with Charlie Smith, the famous referee who's in his 80s, he and his wife hospitalized. She breaks it over into 30 people, claim they all got COVID. Many sick, many hospitalized, including kids and their parents who went, allegedly even.
And there's no telling how many people those people infected on their way out of Vegas and back to their home locations.
That's the exponential spread of it, because I've asked everybody I could talk to, like even the pal of mine, my photo editor for A&E, he went. I didn't even know he went. I kind of told him about it, but I said I would pass this year. I didn't go because I didn't feel it was safe with Delta variant and all breakthrough cases. I was fully vaccinated last March, but all these thousands of breakthrough cases like Chris Rock saying he got it and he's deathly sick. He goes, you do not want this. And so many other famous people.
And Evan got it too, and it was nearly deadly. I mean, it was tough for him and his wife.
His wife tested, but tested negative, but he did the right thing. He quarantined, he did everything asked of him. But I'm saying anybody can get it. People have been vaccinated, and this latest variant is super scary shit. You do not want to get it. There have been people that died. There's way more than they thought would die as breakthrough cases. But what I'm saying is at the 11th hour, right before people went to Vegas, they put hidden on the website. Nobody goes to the website anymore. They put this disclaimer I'll have you read, because my own attorney brother and others have looked at it, said this would be laughed out of court. Like, by virtue of attending CAC, you acknowledge that you will hold CAC harmless if you get COVID, if you get sick, you can't sue. Well, that would be argued and laughed out of court, because
I don't know. Right now, no one has a lawsuit though against somebody for getting COVID. It would be hard to show that that's exactly.
No, there have been employer lawsuits, but I'm not suggesting anybody do that. What I'm saying is that was laughable in order for him to push this through because he wanted to make the money.
It's true. It was a really bad decision. It was really bad. Some people made some very bad judgments. Not only hold the event, but to go. Nobody was forced to go to this thing.
Oh, but if you hold it, you know that there are a lot of people that won't use their best judgment, that are longing to see their friends, that will go and risk it. I don't know how many people have told me back when I contact them and say, did you get sick there? You went, right? And did you get sick there? Yes or no? And they all said this was a bad decision because it was like a ghost town. There were quite a few people coughing and sneezing repeatedly there. And when asked to leave or whatever, because there was little mask wearing, except at the Tuesday night bologna blowout where you have to stand in a buffet line, no sneeze guards over the food allegedly. But that was the only time when the hotel staff actually came up and tried to enforce the mask mandate issued by the governor for the entire state of Nevada. You're indoors. He recommended not being indoors for great lengths of time. This is a 3 to 4 day, all day long thing. That's CAC. That's the scary part, which makes it different from a concert or anything else. Often in tiny cramped rooms with poor ventilation, because this hotel is way off the strip. It's an antiquated old hotel, bad ventilation. Even the non-smoking rooms always smell like cigarette smoke, and they've never been clean when you go there day one. But people will not use their judgment. They want to see their friends. They'll go. And a shitload of photos were taken from this thing, like at the Sunday and Monday night wrestling shows. People didn't even know they're being photographed from behind and at different angles, not one mask worn. So the people who were coughing and sneezing and asked to leave would say, "Oh, no, I'm just getting over a cold." Well, now everybody thinks those were Agent Ground Zeros, all of those people. I don't know how many of them there were. But you're risking the honorees. And we're talking Rey Mysterio Jr., Medusa, Paul Ellering, who's way over 65 and has had some health stuff in the past, but thank God not heard anything about any of the talent. The great talent. It was a great lineup, but there were very few attendees. Like, I don't know why, it was like allegedly a last minute decision by Greg Oliver, who last year was our champion, who got the thing postponed, which so many of us were praying for. Just get it postponed to when it's safe for everyone. I
agree.
And emailing and talking openly that, hey, people in Canada, it's not the same with the U.S. People in Canada, if they go to the U.S., then they have to quarantine
on the way back. Yeah.
Yes. So
other countries don't trust us anymore. That's for sure. Anyway.
Wait. Rick went last minute. So a lot of us are disappointed. He went last minute. And he was telling some of us who were starting to investigate and ask questions about how many people, because we're seeing all this shit on social media, how many people got it, are hospitalized, caught it. Again, the count now, at least 30 people. And he told me to shut the F up and stop being a negative Nelly, is how he put it. And I go, hey, pal, I come from a medical background. I'm concerned about others. How many times did I tell the president starting last March 12th of last year, 2020, we do not want to kill Carl. We don't use the don't kill grandma principle. And if it's something that might kill grandma, or in this case, Carl, or anybody over 80, like Charlie Smith, legendary ref, who's now hospitalized with his wife from going, allegedly, that's not what we want to do. So people ask questions and what have you, because that seems like a super spreader event. If like only, less than 130 people went, I don't know what the actual count is, but that's what I've been told. So that's an allegedly. And over 30 people, at least 30 people got sick, many very seriously. They finally last Friday night, after some really good guys like Chris Monaco, who also wisely didn't attend, kept demanding when he heard like 2 days after CAC ended a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, that people were getting ill, reportedly, blaming CAC. It took well over a week, and it wasn't posted until late last Friday night, a really vague, pussy-ish statement. Oh, we're hearing some claim that they may have gotten tested positive from being at Vegas. So you use your, whatever, if you want to get tested. It didn't even mention people were hospitalized, that there's some serious cases. It
is very serious. But we're out of time for this week, and we want to catch that Niner game. So we'll talk again more about this next week, and we'll also probably have some great guests on. So it's great to have you back again, Mike.
Hey, tell your friends to tell a friend. We're hopefully going to have Evan back with us next week. I'll make sure of that.
Well, that would be great. He'd be a very
publisher. We can nag Jeff Walter to get that book done.
We'll try. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll see everybody again next week. Thanks for watching this, folks. Bye.
Namaste.
Good night.
Hey, buddy.